Hello, thank you for joining me for our regulatory overview for the month of June. We did process quite a few items this month, and so we have picked out those that we think are going to be the most important and the most impactful to the financial services industry. And so I will be highlighting those for you today. I'm going to start with the FDIC. First of all, they issued some revised guidelines for appeals of material supervisory determinations. You may remember that back in January of 2021, they issued a revision of the guidelines. And at that time, they established a brand new Office of Supervisory Appeals. And that was where you were supposed to go if you wanted to appeal a material supervisory determination. Now they have reversed that. You will no longer go to that new office. You will go back to the previously existing Supervision Appeals Review Committee. So kind of a turnaround there from the FDIC. We also had the FDIC issue a financial institution letter that establishes a process whereby an institution can ask that they be considered a minority depository institution. So this establishes that process if you feel that you are such an institution and you would like to have the FDIC recognize you as such. And then from the FDIC, we did have some amended regulations on what constitutes prohibited actions when you are using the FDIC's name or logo, or you are suggesting or outright saying that a product of yours is FDIC insured. There are already regulations around this, but this adds a new section to those regulations that specifically tells us how the FDIC will determine that something is prohibited and how they will enforce their requirements. And those new regs are effective on July 5th of this year. Moving to the Federal Reserve, we had changes to Regulation J, which governs the collection of checks and other items, as well as funds transfers through FedNow and FedWire. You probably know that the Fed is working on rolling out the new FedNow system. That will be the one that can provide immediate fund transfers for folks. So they can request that funds be transferred and they are credited to the receiver immediately. They needed to make some changes to Reg J to establish the terms and conditions under which those funds transfers will work through the new FedNow service. So these amendments are effective on October 1st. FedNow is not yet available. They are hoping for this year, although it might move into early next year. From the CFPB, we again had some interesting things. They have announced that they will begin issuing what they are calling consumer financial protection circulars. These circulars will go to different agencies that have enforcement authority over federal consumer financial laws, and they will advise those agencies on how the CFPB will be interpreting and enforcing various rules. They're not binding on the agencies, but the CFPB is hoping that they can sort of eliminate some of the inconsistencies that you might see among the agencies when they are enforcing different rules. So the first circular was the one that announced that we will be getting these circulars. The second one had to do with something we just talked about, which was deceptive representations that involve the FDIC's name or logo around saying that something is insured. So the FDIC amended their rules to say what they would consider to be prohibited practices. The CFPB is letting us know how they would see something as being unfair or deceptive, which is a little bit different nuance on it. So that one was the second circular. And then we had a third circular, and this one was letting us know that the ECOA and Regulation B require you to let applicants for credit know why you have taken adverse action. And that might seem easy because that's what it has always said, But this specifically has to do with when you make a decision based on a complex algorithm. So if you are using some of those credit models that rely on algorithms, you can't just say, well, the system denied you. You have to give them specific reasons why they were denied. And if you don't understand the algorithm or the model well enough to provide those reasons, then you can't use that algorithm. So they want to be very sure that you understand that even if you've relied on one of these systems to deny somebody or take adverse action, you still are required to give them those specific reasons. Then we had a couple of examples, more examples of the CFPB reaching out into other areas and starting to review some things. So this time we have a request for information on relationship banking and customer service. Specifically, the Bureau wants to know how consumers can assert their right to get responses when they ask for information about their accounts, and specifically when they ask for information from banks and credit unions that have more than 10 billion in assets, because those institutions are required to provide that information under the Consumer Financial Protection Act. So they would like to get those comments by July 21st. And we also have a request from them for information on credit card late fees and late payments. So they are interested in knowing how these fees and payments are assessed against consumers, what type of burden that might impose on the consumers, and also on card issuers' revenue and expenses. So as you can see, they are looking at a lot of different areas, expanding some of their reach a little bit, and comments on the credit card late fees and late payments will be due by July 22nd. So we're also not getting a lot of time to formulate our comments. From the NCUA, we had a letter on the use of distributed ledger technologies. If you use them or plan to use them, then the NCUA wants you to know that that is not prohibited as long as you do it for permissible activities and you are complying with all laws and regulations and operating in a safe and sound manner. So as with a lot of these emerging technologies, there are questions about whether you even can use them. They want you to know that you can, as long as you do it in compliance with all the rules that you have to follow. We had a few things from FinCEN. We had a request for comments on potentially the implementation of a no action letter process. FinCEN is thinking about doing that, and they would like to know how they should implement it, and also how it would interact with some of their other forms of relief that they currently use. And they want comments on that by August 5th. We had a FinCEN advisory on elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, we get a lot of these advisories to alert us to different scams and things that are going on. This one has to do with exploiting elderly people. So they let us know about some typologies that are used around this type of exploitation, also some potential red flags you can be looking for. And they also gave you some advice on what you should put into a suspicious activity report if you should have to file one. Lastly, from FinCEN, we had a statement on BSA due diligence for independent ATM owners and operators. And here they wanted you to remember that just because somebody is an independent ATM owner or operator, it doesn't automatically mean that they pose a higher risk to your institution. You should not be just wholesale denying services to these types of customers. Rather, you should be implementing your standard due diligence process and your risk ratings. They did include a list of things you might want to consider when you are looking at these types of customers, but they wanted to be very clear that they do not want you to just deny them because of the type of customer they are. You need to look a little deeper than that before you decide that you shouldn't bank them. From OFAC, we had amendments to the Cuban Assets Control Regulations. They are authorizing some things that were previously not authorized, such as educational travel, attending educational activities. They also removed the $1,000 quarterly limit on family remittances. So that one might be important to you. And then lastly, from the Farm Credit Administration, we have a proposal. They are proposing to require direct lender associations to adopt independent strategic plans for their young, beginning, and small farmer and rancher programs. So right now, there's some information that Farm Credit lender associations put into their operational plans. This would require that those become an independent standalone strategic plan. And this strategic plan would have to be approved, reviewed and approved annually by the association's funding bank. So that would be a change. So that's it for the month of June. I hope you have a great July, and I will look forward to talking with you again next month.